Hello, my name is Kim Smith, and today I'm going to be talking about the pharmaceutical approval process, or in other words, how drugs are approved, specifically in the United States, because it does vary from country to country. And I apologize if there's a glare on the screen. I've done my best to fix it, but it's very sunny out, so we're having some technical difficulties. So, who approves pharmaceutical drugs in the United States? The FDA is in charge of approving drugs. And the FDA is led by the Commissioner of Food and Drugs, who's appointed by the President with the assistance and the advice of the Senate. The FDA is responsible for protecting and promoting public health through the supervision of food and drugs. And in addition to what you would assume food and drugs would include, this also includes dietary supplements, cosmetics, and veterinary products. So before the FDA was created, companies can make claims about a product without any proof of the product actually working or being helpful, which left consumers very vulnerable. And I think of this kind of like an infomercial for a blender, let's say. The infomercial is not showing the faults that the blender could have, what could go wrong. And while that's not super significant when you're purchasing a blender, it is significant when you're purchasing a medication because there is a lot that could go wrong and there is serious consequences that could happen. So since the creation of the FDA has approved over 19,000 prescription drugs for marketing. So you may be wondering, how does the FDA approve these drugs? So it's a 9-step procedure with the steps ranging from the drug being developed, to animal testing, to clinical trials, to drug approval, and to lastly post-marketing monitoring. And because it's 9 steps, it does take a pretty long time. And rather than getting into each of these, I'm going to play a short video created by the FDA that summarizes the process so you have a better idea of how it is approved.
And effective drugs are essential to caring for your patients. So here are 5 things to know about how FDA approves a drug for use. It starts when a drug is investigated and screened. Generally, new drugs are tested on animals before people. Additionally, in some cases, multiple species are used to gather information on the safety of the compound being investigated. The drug sponsor submits an investigational new drug application, an IND, to the FDA based on the results of the initial testing. The application is required to include the drug's composition as well as the details of its manufacturing. The IND presents a plan for testing the drug on humans. The FDA reviews the plan to determine if the proposed clinical trials will put human subjects at unreasonable and significant risk of illness or injury. Generally, there are 3 phases to a clinical trial in humans. Phase 1 emphasizes safety, typically includes 20 to 80 healthy volunteers. Phase 2 emphasizes effectiveness and typically includes hundreds of patients with a certain disease or condition. Phase 3 typically includes thousands of patients and is used to gather more information about the safety and effectiveness in different populations and different doses. After the clinical trials are complete, the FDA looks carefully at all the animal and human testing data, reviews the drug labeling information, and inspects the facilities where the drugs will be manufactured to determine if the new drug is safe and effective. Because it's not possible to predict all of the drug's effects during clinical trials, monitoring safety issues after drugs get on the market is critical. The role of FDA's post-marketing safety system is to detect adverse events and take regulatory action when needed. That's 5 things you need to know about the drug approval process.
Okay, so hopefully that video gave you a better idea of how exactly drugs are approved. So to summarize, the drug approval process includes the analysis of the target condition and already available treatments for that condition, the assessment of benefits and risks from clinical data, which is what the video was talking about, the clinical trials with humans, and strategies for managing risks, and this is during the approval process and also in the post-marketing monitoring. So because the FDA is a science-led organization, it uses the very best scientific and technological information to make the safest and most beneficial decision for the general public. So if a drug is approved by the FDA, they say that it was determined to provide benefits that outweigh its known and intended potential risks. So there's obviously risks of every medication and every drug, but if the FDA approves the drug, they believe that the benefits are outweighing those potential risks. So, as I mentioned, it's a rather long process, and you may be wondering if there is any times when the process can be sped up or expedited. So, um, the process takes a long time because the FDA is dedicated to ensuring patient safety and drug effectiveness. However, there are situations where the process can and needs to be expedited. The options for this are called fast track, breakthrough therapy, and priority review. And these are primarily used when the drug being tested may, and I quote, fill an unmet medical need. And it also used if the drug that's being tested is found to be more effective than others already on the market. So a drug company can apply for fast track or breakthrough therapy or priority review and have their drug considered to be expedited. And from my research, I learned that most of the time this is for life-threatening illnesses. So if there's a drug that's potentially going to save someone's life, obviously this is going to be expedited over a dietary supplement that may be less life-changing. So what pharmaceuticals were approved in 2019? There's 18 drugs approved by the FDA in 2019, treating a number of conditions such as genetic diseases, cardiovascular diseases, infectious diseases. The drugs really touched on every part of the body, and even like the mouth, oral cysts was one of them. And the FDA sometimes gets public concerns that they are not approving enough drugs. And I read an article in my research that the FDA says the number of drugs approved is correlated directly to the number of applications submitted. So the years that there's fewer applications, there's fewer drugs approved. That seems to be the trend. So to show that, this is an infographic of new drug approvals from 2006 to 2018. You can see it is rather steady. 2018 had significantly more than 2006, for example, but it stays steady over the years, and it is directly correlated to the number of applications that are received. So, are there ever withdrawals of medication? So, as I mentioned, the FDA does post-market monitoring to ensure that benefits continue to outweigh the risks, and there are times when this is not the case. So, drug is either recalled, corrected, or removed. So just to touch on the definitions of those, when a drug is corrected, it's a modification, adjustment, inspection, etc. of a product without its physical removal to some other location. So it needs to be corrected, but it's not super severe and not as severe as recall or removal, which I'll get to. Removal is the physical removal from its point to use to some other location for repair, modification, etc. And a recall, which you're probably familiar with, products get recalled all the time, is a firm removal or correction when the product is in violation of the FDA laws. So when the product is no longer, the benefits are no longer outweighing the risks. So FDA's roles in recalls, the FDA says that a drug recall is the best way to protect the public from a defective or harmful product. And recalls are often conducted on a company's own decision. They're realizing the drug they put out is not as productive as they once thought it was. Or it can be by FDA request that's determined during the post-marketing monitoring. So a public notification is issued when a product has been widely distributed or poses a severe health consequence. And the FDA will often announce the recall on its website or in the news if they feel it's fitting, but there are times when, if it hasn't been widely distributed and there's not a severe consequence, that you might not find out until you go pick up the medication from the pharmacy and the manufacturer has sent out a notice that it's no longer an option. It's important to note also that if the FDA believes a company's recall was ineffective, so the company did not get the news out fast enough or productively enough, they can request that the company take additional action. So the FDA does have control over that. And I wanted to end with a piece of current events about the FDA in the news and manipulated data. So this past week, August 2019, the maker of the world's most expensive drug manipulated data given to the FDA when it was in the process of approving it. So the drug is called Zolgensma, and it's gene therapy to treat children with a severe form of spinal muscular atrophy. The drug costs $2.125 million for a single treatment, and as I mentioned, the drug makers gave the FDA completely wrong, falsified data. And that being said, despite the inaccurate data, the FDA remains confident that the drug should remain on the market. So this is when post-market monitoring will really come into play because the FDA now knows they were given falsified data, the numbers were not completely accurate, And so they know they have to pay a lot of attention to this drug and make sure that it is completely safe for use and is actually going to help, especially if someone's going to be paying $2.125 million for a single treatment. So that's it. Thank you for listening. Here's my references page, and thank you.